All right, we're going to assemble some stools because some of the classes have not assembled stools yet. And so I thought we'd go ahead and assemble a stool all the way through the making of the plugs today. So there'll be some little starts and stops and stuff as we change places in the classroom, but it all should run fairly smoothly. And this is, 8th grade has probably got the majority of their stools done already. So it's just a matter of doing the 6th and 7th grade, and so you can kind of see what happens after you make the pieces. And the assembly is actually the funnest part because you actually get all the work you've done, it actually comes to fruition. So anyway, this here bracket, I was just ready to test fit it, which means that you put it in place to make sure all the pieces fit ahead of time, and then you go back and then you can just put them together. But before you do that, if you see anything that needs to be sanded, this corner is not uniform, so I'm just going to sand a little bit, and there's a little bit of a lump there that I want to sand out. So you just take and sand that off, or sand all the parts before you assemble them, and then that will save you a lot of work trying to do it after the fact. So anyway, when you're gluing, we always use yellow glue in here for the most part, and yellow glue is just made for wood. It's formulated for wood. It absorbs into the pores of the wood, and especially where you go side to side like that, it's going to be a much more powerful joint, but it's still good to have some on the end joints as well. So when you apply a bead of glue, you point the glue bottle at the piece of wood you're putting glue on, and then you can squeeze as hard or as little as you want. You want about a 1/16 bead of glue, about like that. And the reason you use that, when it spreads out in the wood, it will tend to spread out to the edges but not go over the edges. Because then if you get over the edges, then you end up scraping, and scraping isn't fun. So we're going to try to avoid scraping glue. So if you can just use a little light bead of glue like that, point it right at it, put a little glue on there. You put it on one side so you hold the leg in position, then you slide the bracket or the brace over to it. Same thing. Put it in the glue bottle right at the piece of wood and put it in position. And then slide it all together. It should fit fairly well on this jig I made. Well, I got the wrong size screws, so I have to grab 2-inch screws, and I only grabbed the 1.25", so I'll be right back. Should have just put the other ones away. We're not even using those today. And I'm back. So a lot of times you can put the screws right in the holes. So I'll just do these 4 for now. Just put them right in the holes. So then I'm holding the leg down into this pocket here against the stop. And then I'm pushing the brace against this piece of oak, or the stop here, and against the leg. You want to keep that really firm into those pockets and stuff so that it'll come out nice and square. If you don't do this, the stools will rock, and if they rock, nobody feels secure sitting in a rocky chair, because if it falls down, you fall down. So it's always a wise choice to get these as level as possible. And it saves a little work on the back side too. I'll just turn this around. I'll drive screws in the top bracket. There we go. Get the screws in there. Used to be pretty good at just dipping out the right amount of screws, but I was off today. I got 1 extra. So now I'm going to push it into the pocket and hold it against the brace, just the way I did on the other side. You don't have to turn this around. I'm only doing it so that you can see what I'm doing. If you can screw with your other hand, so this is the standard way. This is what everybody likes to do. But you can use your thumb. So say you're like this, you can use your thumb. There's been times I've used my little finger. So you can get good control in a lot of different directions, and you don't have to use your index finger. You can use whatever finger's working for that piece of wood. I should mention too, we're using a square driver. These screws are especially designed for driving into wood. They've got all sorts of little nuances. The engineers figured everything out. They're self-tapping, which means they will go in and cut a thread for themselves. And they've got these, I forget what they call these, but it actually will allow you to sink the head into the wood so that you don't have to counterbore if you don't want to. I didn't do it on the toolboxes, but that's for another day. But 2-inch screws, and then they have a square driver. And what it is a good driver, a good quality screw. You should be able to put the end of the screw on there and they should stay put. Even to some extent, they'll stay even vertically. So that's a really good, this is a good quality driver. It's a Craig driver. You can buy them at Menards. And then these screws are really good ones too. I've always found that if you buy poor quality stuff, you end up paying for it in time later, and I don't like to do that. So this set of legs is all screwed together, so then you can just pull them out. And then we have to move our stops. We have 2 positions for each legs, for each set of braces, and they're either in one or the other. So they'll either be in the top positions or the bottom positions with reference to the bottom. So we'll take that out, we'll pull these stops out, reposition them. This is just plain old threaded rod. You can get a lot of different sizes, but it's threaded from one end to the other. Whereas a bolt, you'll only have like an inch of thread. This is threaded all the way, but it's very versatile. I did this because I didn't know exactly how much thread I would need. And so by using threaded rod, I just use as much as I need. And if it's too long, I can always cut it off a little bit. But you don't want to waste anything. But anyway, you just screw it in by hand. And I've used T-nuts. It's another piece of hardware. That's up actually underneath. I can see if I got one over there. It seems to me I got an extra T-nut. I'll see if I can remember to show you what one looks like. And again, they're especially made for wood. They have all sorts of different types of T-nuts and fasteners of that type. But let's see, I didn't move that one, did I? That's kind of funny. There we go. Did I move that one? I had to have moved it. Let's just see here. Yeah, I definitely did it right. So this is good. I'm just checking to see where these holes are. And when I put my piece of wood here now, it's going to go into these holes. That's how I know that I got it in the right position. Always checking. The more you check on yourself, the less chance, the sooner you can catch a mistake. And the sooner you catch a mistake, less you have to rebuild. I'm always trying to, it's not that I'm lazy, I just prefer not to rebuild stuff. It just takes more time and it wastes material and time. So just notice a place here on this leg where it's uneven right here, all the way up. So this leg must not have been sanded very well. I'll just sand that a little bit. See, I would like to be able to take my hand and go all the way up and down here, but because it's assembled, I can't do that. Now I just gotta kind of tinker with this little spot. That's what I'm saying, it takes more time than I'd probably done already if I didn't have to go down the bracing. And the better job you do over on the router stand, the less you have to do with this too. So the work has got to get done. It's just it makes less work for later. And I always prefer to take and make less work for later. All right, so we'll dry fit it. These should be the last couple of legs that go on here, so it should be pretty easy to figure out which ones are which. I have this one pulled out a little ways away from the stop right here. So put that together, make sure everything is about where it should be. It appears to be perfect. and ready to go. So I'll pull this leg out, then you examine the pieces and make sure that they look good. That one's ready to go. Point the glue bottle at the joint, put a bead of glue on there. Same thing on this side. Piece, make sure it looks good. Looks pretty good. A little bit of glue on it. Again, I'm holding it up and doing different things I wouldn't normally do for you guys, so that you can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, if you guess, you don't have to guess what I'm trying to do. It's not a good teacher that does that. So anyway, grab 3 screws for this side, and then we'll turn around and drive the other screw, 4 screws on the other side. I use the same technique. I'll be driving or pulling the legs back into the pocket and the brace down against the brake or the stop right here. So let's get her done. That looks good. Yep, wrong way. There we go. No, I'm going the right way. Okay, I'm pulling the leg down into the pocket with my hand and holding the brace down against the oak. Stop. I'm trying to get loose from the screws. That's a good screw. I'd rather do that than have them easily fall out. Once fall out. So this time, I'll be doing it just the opposite. Little spot on that brace. I'll have to sand that after the fact. So there's that. The other way. Here we go. We're using basswood for the construction here. See, I'm so used to pulling back towards me. Now I'm doing everything in the reverse I would typically do it. So just a little bit of a learning curve on what I'm doing here. There we go. Okay, now we'll do the next one. Same thing. Shave, and I cut 6-bit. Alright. Got that one. Oh, and I don't know if I remember to tell you, but see these wing nuts? You want to have those so that they line up with the edge here. You never want to have them turned out like this, because when you take like this out, this brace is going to hit on that wing nut and you're going to damage the brace. So you want to make sure, I don't know if I said anything about that or not, but it's important to have those turned so that they don't interfere. First one I made, I didn't do that, and I ended up having to do a bunch of sanding to make it look pretty again. And I do not like to sand more than I have to. It's one of my least favorite things to do. So I'm going to grab a little clamp that I can put on this end, and it's going to give me just enough space to sneak these last couple braces in. So I'll just go over and grab one of these clamps, and I'll show you a little trick that you can do with them. I'll probably use this one. It'll work. So what you can do, a lot of these clamps are reversible, so not only can you squeeze with it, so you squeeze between the jaws, but you can also expand. And you take this nut out. Get that down so you can see good. You can take that out. I love versatility in tools, because I have had versatility get me out of so many jams over the years. And what you do is you slide this forward, and then this clamp, see, and then you put, so they oppose each other. So it goes like that, then you put this little screw back in. Really get it, find the hole there. There we go. There, I found it. All right, then you just thread it back on, and now, instead of squeezing, it'll actually expand something. And that's what I want to do at this end, is I just want to slightly expand it so I can get the braces in there. Just gotta get my hands in the right spot here. Kind of be a lot easier if I go like this. You don't want to have it so that it's going to interfere with your working, but at the same time, if you can just get that to move out just a little bit, everything won't affect the glue joints at all. And it'll give you more space to work, and that's what we need for just a temporary here. So we get all these pieces wiped off, and where we're going to assemble them, they should be nice and clean, and they are. So you look, you don't see any defects I need to take out. So this time, I always like to have it on the right side. So you go on the right side, you tip it in, and 1/8 of an inch should be more than enough to allow you to get that on. So you put it on against one side and the other side, because you put the clamp on there, will allow you to slide that brace into place. And there's a second one, so we do the same thing. So I'm going to put it against this side and just put it up against the stop, and my clamp fell off. So here we go. That kind of stuff happens. We'll just do it again here. I can get it in here. Hey, look at that. So again, it's got to be out of your way. If it's not out of your way, then it's not doing you any good. So then I just put it in, and I'll tilt it into position. I remove the clamp, and it'll just kind of go back into position because it just stretches. Wood is really nice for stretching. If you try to do that with a piece of steel, unless it's a really big piece of steel, you wouldn't be enjoying life too much. It'll stretch on like bridge decks and stuff. They can use huge hydraulic come-alongs and chain winches and stuff to slightly distort the steel. It'll snap back in, but on a short section like this on steel, you're not moving it unless it's really light. Okay, so I'm going to pull the leg back towards me, and I'm pushing the brace down into the stop. So everything should be nice, uniform. You drive the screw. Go. Yes, one day recently I was thinking about crumple zones on the car, and I talked to a couple once that said they're in a wreck with an old car, and that old car it was old, and so one guy said they got damaged pretty bad, and then down the line they had a wreck with a newer car. And the newer car had something called crumple zones. Well, with the crumple zones, what that does, it's like an accordion, so it squeezes together in a very specific spot. And instead of just deaccelerating and having no squish in it, like a spring or a sponge, so it remains rigid. And so they had no room to actually slow down. But with the new car, they were able to get out of the car and keep on going. And with very few damages themselves with the airbags and with the crumple zone. So instead of being really badly damaged, the same couple said that, that they had pretty good luck that way. They were just able to get out of the car and walk away. So that's why that came into mind. I think about that kind of stuff when I'm just assembling easy stuff like this, because they don't have to think too much about it. I've driven so many screws, it's really kind of can do it without thinking very much anymore. But anyway, so that is the main part of the assembly. So now I should be able to sit there and not rock very much. That is beautiful, beautiful. Okay, I'll grab a seat, and we'll have to set up on the drill press to counterboard and drill it, and then we'll assemble the seat to the top of the stool. So there you go. We'll move over there now. Well, we're going to just use this pattern to transfer punch onto this piece of stock. It was actually done on the opposite side. So this is actually top, and that's where we're going to be drilling the counter bores. So that'll be in the next segment, hopefully. So anyway, you just put this on. These are called stops right here. We're just going to put that up against until it stops on this material like so. And then you use the transfer punch. It goes in these holes. These are 3/8 holes, and this is a 3/8 transfer punch. All it does is transfer the hole locations from the pattern onto the wood or steel or whatever you're doing. So that's why it's called a transfer punch. You're just transferring dimensions from one piece onto the other. You should have a pretty good mark on them. Notice I spin it a little bit. It's helping it to find the center, and that way it doesn't go wonky into the, wonky means it's just going in crooked, you know, like that. So you just have it go straight in. I spin a little bit. It's like a bullet, you know, the faster you spin the bullet, the more accurate it shoots. And it's the same thing with this. And I always forget how soft basswood is. So these are some fairly large transfer punches, and I usually just take a lead pencil and mark so they're really easy to see. Of course, these are really easy to see. And that's, now they're all marked and ready to go. So now we'll set up for the counter bore. So what I'm doing now is I'm setting up for the counter bore with a 3/8 drill bit. We use a very specific size drill bit so that we know, because I know I have a 3/8 plug. So if we use the 3/8 drill bit, it'll fit with the 3/8 plug. So we go ahead and assemble that to the chuck, and I think I've showed everybody countless times on how to do that. I've already got this set up. Now let's see, what speed are we at here? Looks like we're at 2380. See that right there? So the belts are set up for 2380 RPM. And we have to think about safety for you girls. I don't have long hair like you. In fact, I have hardly no hair, but so I don't have to worry about that as much. But there's the sleeves, because you don't want them to get caught in the drill press, and it'll wrap you up and ding you. And nobody likes to get hurt. So I'll just roll up my sleeves here. And then hearing protection and eye protection, obviously. You got to have all that stuff to operate any machinery. So anyway, I'm going to set this up now. I'll see that drill press is not set for something this low or this high. So I'm going to loosen this bolt on the back side. This will allow me to crank the bed down a little bit. Or the table. Could be called the bed or the table, this. I've heard it called both. There's probably a difference somehow or another, and I don't know what that is right now. But anyway, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get that so that it's exactly centered. A lot of times it'll just kind of fall into the hole. The drill bit will find the center. So you just got to be kind of gentle and let it float around a little bit. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set it for the counter bore. Counter bore is just a partially drilled hole, and in this case, some of you have probably seen this picture, but this is a mock-up of the drill bit. So it comes down to a point, and then this height from here, that's where we got to get the drill bit into the wood. So we start right here, and then we stop the drill press, so it stops rotating. And then there's a nut on one side, and then a double nut, and then the double nut on top will actually keep you from going too deep. So I'm going to set it for 1/4 inch deep. From that shoulder, it's called the shoulder, and I want that shoulder to be 1/4 inch below the surface. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. And we'll go through a more descriptive, detailed thing later. Alright, so I'm going to start the drill press. Just kind of let it find center. Found it real good. So now I'm going to bring it down to just where the drill bit starts into the shoulder, and I'm going to bring it back up. Let it stop. It's very tempting sometimes to grab the chuck and slow it down with your hand. I would avoid that. You can get caught on any jewelry. Most machinists don't wear any type of jewelry. I was a machinist for years, and I'm in the wood shop, and I'm retired now, so I don't mind wearing a ring like I used to. But my wife for years would get angry at me for not wearing my wedding ring, and now I wear it just to make her happy. What makes her happy makes me happy. So you read the dial on this side right now, and it hit right on 1 inch, which is really nice, because then we know that we just want to make it a 1/4 inch deeper. So we use the scale, bring it down until you're 1/4 inch above, and then you bring the other one down. It's called a lock nut. And then lock that lock nut down, and then move the bottom nut all the way to the bottom. And now I'm ready to drill. And when I'm drilling, all the holes should be a 1/4 inch deep at this point to the shoulder. Okay, there's one hole drilled. You should try to be about 3 inches away from the drill bit at all times. That's a minimum. If you can be further away, better. I've made drill jigs and fixtures so that I can actually keep my hands away from cutters. Whatever time you spend doing that, building a jig or a fixture to protect yourself, it's worth every lick of it. Sometimes I spent 2 days building a jig just to make a small cut because it's dangerous. Better to spend the time than to lose your digits. These are digits. Okay, all 4 holes are drilled. They're already pre-marked, so that's why I was able to do it so quickly. And we went around with a transfer punch. Everybody used the transfer punch in the class, I know that, because I went through each person and let them do one. So anyway, the transfer punch marks the spots, and then it actually gives the drill press a place to walk into when you're drilling. And then when it comes to drilling, then you just bring it over and drill the holes. That's what's nice about using a transfer punch. Anyway, now we're going to switch over to a 3/16 drill bit, and that's going to be our through hole. That's where the screw will pass through, and then it'll go right into the, it just goes a little ways into the top of the table, and a little bit doesn't hurt. I'll put that back in the container. It'll look like 3/16. I'm checking on the shank of the drill. Remember, we got the shank part that's smooth right here, and it's written in ink a lot of times, and the ink will actually wear off after a while. So that's the shank, and then this is the flutes. Okay, I already said this is the tip, and then you got the shoulders. So everything has a name, so that when you go to a tool maker, you can say, well, I need a different drill angle. So if it's at 118 degrees, say, I need a 120-degree rake angle, not rake angle, but angle on the drill, and I would like the rake angle, which is the little angle right here. That might be only like 5 or 6 degrees. So you can go to a machinist or a tool maker, and then they can say, oh, that's not a problem, I know exactly how to do that. He'll put it in the machine and off he goes. So anyway, now we want to reset the drill depth. A couple ways to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust this up for now. You want to set these nuts so that they should go right into that hole, and you want it to go into this little hole right here. You could go up to an 1/8 inch in there. If I have to make that go more than, see how far the drill bit is between here? You should really have that a little closer, so I'm just going to adjust that table up a little bit. You want it, like I say, a 1/2 inch to an inch, and it should be able to go right in that hole. It's already there. I can move that easily because this is not tightened yet. I used to be afraid to adjust stuff on these machines, but they're made to be adjusted, so why wouldn't you? Make life easy on yourself and use the machines, what they've got on it to help you do your job. That's what it's there for. It only takes a few seconds, and a lot of times it just involves learning a little technique here and there. So I can let that back up and try to get this crazy nut. I am going to put some lubrication on that maybe one of these days. There we go, that's the way it should spin down. Okay, then you lock the lock nut. That's only going to keep it so we don't go too far in. Just stand and push them off. Now you can be off center with these things quite a long ways, and it'll move a little bit. That's it. I don't know if that took on the camera or not, but it actually moved quite a bit. See if I can make it do it a lot again. We'll start way over on the edge of the hole. See it move? It wants to find center. It doesn't want to drill off center. just the nature of the beastie. Kind of personifying the wood, but it's kind of the way it is. Well, the other thing I do like to peck is peck. You peck so that it draws the chips out. And in the old days when I was running steel stuff, and I drilled for like 2 years straight on different machines. I was a drill press operator. And so that's why some of this stuff looks a lot easier than what it is. But the reason you use speed a lot of times to draw chips out of the cut. And drill bits are the fastest cutting tool, I think, in the shop. There might be other ones, but it is one of the fastest cutting ones because you can run it at high speed. You run in 2 flutes. It's an extremely efficient cutting tool. It's one of the great things about drills. So other than they can wrap you up in them, they're very safe. You know, the only place to really get cut is at the very tip. These will wear on you, but they won't necessarily cut you real fast. For drill bits anyway. End mills and stuff will, but anyway, that's another thing. But so drill press is one of the safest machines in the shop, and it's like one of my favorite tools anyway. So anyway, we're done cutting, drilling the holes. I did it all very quickly, but kind of got the gist of it. So now we're just going to assemble this to the top of the stool, and that stool will be done. All right. So we're going to use this little holding fixture to hold our stool in place while we put the seat on. It's got stops right here and here. I had to make it in 2 pieces, so I very carefully built this jig so that everything would work. Jigs fixtures are pretty close to the same. They can hold things. One is usually used for holding things to cut, and something else might be, the other one might be used for holding something to just hold it in position while you're assembling it. And I don't know which is which. One of these days I'll Google it. So anyway, we got to get this assembled. So we're going to go like this. I put it right on the corner because these stops have to go down. So you put one in, you do that real carefully because you don't want to damage. Basswood's a very soft wood, and so you don't want to damage the wood by using these pieces of melamine. And melamine is a very hard material, at least on the surface, so it can scratch stuff and do all sorts of funky things. So you just want to be real careful when you're assembling this, so you don't scratch the wood while you're trying to put it together. So. Okay, I got it all in position, I think. There it goes. All right, it was slightly out of square, that's why it wasn't going together real easy. So now that's all put together. Now we're going to use a belt clamp, it's called. Yep. It's sliding out there, so we'll put this around here. And make sure the nut's up so I can use it to tighten it. Still need a little bit more. There we go. Perfect. That goes on like so. You snug it up a little bit. This is, oh, look at that. It's twisted back on it. Anyway, you put that on like so. What that is going to do is it's going to temporarily hold this jig in place, but I got to have a wrench to tighten it up with, so I'll just grab a wrench quick. Whenever you're done with tools, you should always put them away too. So if you find the wrench over there, as soon as you're done with it, you got to put it right back. Otherwise, if somebody might be going to look for stuff and they can't find it, and they're going, "Hey, do you have this tool?" And yeah, "Hey, do you have this tool?" And just saves a lot of time if you just put things away right away. There, it's tight. That's what I want it. Kind of like when we use the clamp to hold, is the last part of the legs there, you know, where we're trying to hold these braces in position. You just stretch a little bit. That's all we did there, is stretch it a little bit. Oh, just go on, I didn't have it quite tight enough. I'm going to tighten it up just a dab more. There, that's really should plenty tight now. It doesn't seem to want to move. All right, good. Oh, there's a little sharp spot there. I have to sand that. All right, so then you just take that, put it on the ground. And I have been using 2-inch screws, but I think I'm going to go to a 3-inch screw because I think it's just going to hold better in the grain. The ones we've already made ain't going to hurt nothing. Just be a little bit stronger. So I'm just going to run and get a 3-inch screw. We need 4 of them. So screws are designed so say you have a 3-inch screw, approximately 1 inch from the top of the head to here is about 1 inch. And then so that'll be 1 inch, and then the last little bit is 1 inch. So you want about 2 inches of threaded screw for 1 inch so it's 2/3 to 1/3 of shank. That's the way good wood screws are designed, and you can count on a good wood screw being like that. Machine screws they can be all sorts of different ways, but that's the way wood screws are typically designed. Don't ask me how the standard came about. I just know that some smart guy figured it out a long time ago. Smart person, probably, is a better way to put it for today's world. So I think we're ready to assemble. Again, you just run it down. This is basswood, so you just run it down until it kind of clutches. And these are very powerful tools. You could easily drive the screw all the way through. So like I say, you just want to bring it down until the clutch engages, or the impactor thingy. And you want to stop, because otherwise it can cause you some troubles. Okay, now we're going to remove what we just put on with the clamp, and it will stay there because we've got the screws in now. So what you do is to release the pressure, so you just pretend like you're tightening a little bit and then pull this little handle here. I don't know what it's called. There's a word for it. I just forget what it is right now. You use the same kind of thing on an automatic transmission, and all it is that it locks in so that your car won't roll forward, it just locks in. Sometimes it's just on a gear or something. Other times it's got like a little piece that'll just drop in to a hole. This is what it's actually doing. See, you move this out like that, and see, and then it releases it from this part right here. That's what allows it to go free. But you have to remove the pressure. There's so much pressure on it that if you didn't remove that, you could never pull this little handle back. So you wrench on this one a little bit, leave the pressure, and it allows you to pull that out. And then it'll slip back so you can turn it, take it off. That's how you do that. Well, and today, I'm actually going to show you how to wrap up a belt clamp properly. A couple of ways to do it, but this is the way I do it. I'd like if you would do this every time. If you're using this clamp, and when you're done, you put it right away, obviously, but you wrap it all around the clamp. See how neat that is? It's much easier to use when it's neatly put away. The next time you pull it out and you got some wet glue or something that's setting up on you, pull out your clamp, you can deploy it quickly and easily. The reason I say that is because I've been stuck just like that, and it's just like, oh no, I need a belt clamp. And if you, now see, I didn't have enough to get all the way around and still tie it off. So you just let it go for a half and do the same thing. It goes all the way around, now you got plenty. Just tie a half knot into it like that, and it's very easy to use. You can deploy it very quickly. Now we're going to remove the jig carefully so you're not scratching stuff up. See, I made it very precise, so it'll see how carefully I'm removing things. You do that so you don't scrape the wood there. So you just take that all out. Now it was sitting perfectly square, but sometimes what will happen is when you put the seat on, the seat is a big strong piece of wood, so sometimes it'll rock. So it rocks just a little bit, and that's not enough to hurt anything. So you can see that it's now a functioning stool. And we're going to go through how to put plugs in these holes in just a minute. Now we're going to cut some plugs to put in the 3/8 holes. That's why we made the counter bores. So this is a plug cutter. Plug cutters don't like to run more than they're probably half the speed, and I'm saying probably about 600 RPMs would be about right. So we're going to try to find something that's around 600 RPMs for this type of tool. A lot of times they'll have right on the packaging, it'll give recommended speeds. So if you had a really big plug cutter, you might only be running 150 RPMs or so. Some drill presses can't even get that low. So I guess this one goes down to 200 up here. But we're looking for something around 600. Well, there's a 580, that's plenty close enough. And so we loosen these screws here on both sides. And we bring it backwards, and we want to have a back belt so it's on the second from the top sheave. So that'd be right here. And then 580. Oh, we gotta put the other one first. So let's do that one first. So that one's the second from the bottom on the front one. That goes like that. This goes on this one, I believe, right? Yep, it goes on that one. And you just put that on that one. Now you should be turning at roughly 580 RPMs. So use this to bring it back and tighten the screw right here. And on this side, the same screw on the opposite side. We shut the cover. You should never operate this machine without this cover shut. If the hinges break off or anything ever happens to it, you have to fix it because this cannot be open because you can get your hair in there and a variety of other things if you have hair. So you always want this cover shut. I had an old buddy of mine, somehow or another he got his finger caught in here and it cut his finger off. You know, there's lots of ways to do that kind of thing, but you just want to keep the covers in place so you don't damage yourself. Because if you damage yourself, it takes all the fun out of woodworking. So anyway, let's pull this 3/16 drill bit out of here. Oh, wrong way. There we go. Like I said earlier, I have the drill bits out. Typically you'll want to leave these in. I'm taking a little bit of I'm taking some liberties today because I'm here by myself essentially running the machines. So anyway, that's why I kept the drill bits out. But so anyway, then you just chuck this up like you'd chuck anything else up. It's got a hexagon, and the hexagon works out just good with the chuck. So you put that on there, and we'll tighten her up. It is interesting. They do have different types of chucks. This one's got 3 fingers on it like this, so it's 3 fingers. Some of them have 4. Well, with the 4, you can only use round bits. They do that so you get better grip around the bit, and then you'll see a lot more on lathes and stuff. So that it's a great big chuck like this, and it has 4 jaws, and you can actually set the jaws off center. So if you needed a hole on a piece of square stock and you need to hold it in the chuck, you can actually adjust the chucks at different amounts, so you can shift things off center, which is pretty funky. And then drill holes inside and stuff like that. It's a real quick, easy way to chuck things up, and that's why they do that kind of thing. But this is just a standard three-jaw chuck, so it's just like that, and it fits just fine on a hexagon because a hex is 6-sided, so that's why it fits on there so good. You know, we're going to adjust the table up and down a little bit because we're way above it. You only want, like I say, about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch between the surface you're cutting and the drill bit tip. It gives you more than enough room to slide it back and forth. So we crank this up. Also keeps the spindle much more stable, and when you're cutting on multiple, there's 4 cutting surfaces on here instead of just 2. When you're cutting multiples like that, multiple cutting surfaces, the more rigidity you can get, the better. And usually rigidity comes from the weight of the machine and how tight we have the bolts. You know, you can have a very good machine, but if you don't tighten the screws down and different things that you need to tighten down, it's not ever going to cut right. People get that kind of thing wrong all the time. Well, I don't want to take the time to tighten that little nut on the opposite side of the machine. Well, it gives you vibration and allows movement, and your machine tool will never cut as good unless all these are tightened down. I've seen people do it on miter boxes where they don't tighten down the miter part. Down in front there's always like a little locking device. You gotta take the time to lock it down or else it'll never cut accurately. One of my buddies was doing it. He says, John, I'm having a lot of problems with my miter box. And so I says, well, let me see. So I went over there and I put the piece of wood up there and I says, well, your thing isn't tight, so I tightened it down. It started cutting perfectly. So so I got to tell him, you're not tightening everything down. So you can have a super good tool, you gotta tighten stuff down. So now we're running at about 600 RPMs. The other thing you want to know with this is you'll want to run it almost twice as fast down. So it's half the speed, twice the feet. So you want to go much faster. I still got to set the depth of cut. So right there I just put it all the way down, made it touch. On the other side there's that little nut that holds the spindle in place while I'm adjusting. And I want to make these, I want to set it for about 5/16 to 3/8. I can't get both these nuts to spin at one time. There we go. Be patient, get her down there. So right now it's reading at about 9/16. So if we want to be at 5/16, we want to be about 7/8. So I stop this about at 7/8. I like to have these a little bit deeper because what we're going to do is we cut actually a cylinder. So instead of drilling a hole, we're cutting a cylinder. And the plug in the middle of the cylinder is what we actually want. That's why they call it a plug. And it also plugs the hole, obviously. Okay, so now we're set at, it's a good solid 5/16. So that should give us plenty of room. And you can see from the previous ones here, I'll show you in just a second here after I get this nut down. You can see on the previous ones where I've made a slot right here, and it's cut the plugs out of the piece of material. If the plugs break out, then you got to wedge them out of these cutters, and that plug is usually shot. It just happens because there's checking and stuff in the wood, and that's fine. You know, it's one of those things where you're not going to get 100%. So if you make, say you need 10 plugs, well, you really want to make probably about 12 or 14. They're inexpensive to make, and you don't want to have to come over and reset up. You know, so say you're over there trying to apply plugs, and somebody else comes over, well, they take your setup out, and then you say to yourself, oh shoot, I just lost a plug and I ruined one, and something else happened to the other. Well, then you end up, you're short a plug. You're just, oh, now I got to reset up. So it's much easier just to make a couple extra, because I guarantee you'll screw up a couple. So, well, we're going to start up the machine, and you're going to notice I'm going to cut much quicker today. I'll be going about that fast into the material. So once it starts, I'll pretty much just push it in. Yeah, see it broke off already. Got too close to the side. So now I got to take a screwdriver or something and wedge that out of there. My handy dandy tool does have a screwdriver. So let's see if I can get that wedged out of there. You notice too when you reduce the speed, that chuck's a lot harder to turn. So see, that's the part that it just broke off. It happens, it's okay. Just make another one. I made a lot of material for plugs, so just the nature of the beast. So. I'm just going to make about 7 or 8 of them here so that you guys get an idea what I'm doing. See, that one broke off. I got to stay away from the edge a little bit. But basswood's such a soft wood. I could do the same. The reason I keep doing it the same way is I'm used to working with oak, and oak is so much more rigid that it's not a problem. It usually doesn't break out like that. But this basswood just has a tendency to break more. Got it this time. you got a bunch of circles in the wood. So each one of these little circles are going to be the plugs. Now we're going to go over to the bandsaw and cut those plugs free from this piece of wood. And you can see why you want to cut them loose, because if you have to take one plug out at a time, it just takes you forever. Whereas if you cut them loose, it can be done about 3 times faster. That's why you do that. And you want to leave yourself enough. Yeah, we're going to waste a little stock, but it's a whole lot better to waste stock and keep your hands away from the bandsaw blade. So we're going to go set up on the bandsaw. So this is a bandsaw. Bandsaw is typically, I think this is 16. It goes from the center of the bandsaw blade to the back here. So it's either 14 or 16. I can't remember right off the top of my head for whatever reason right now. But that, you know, so you can know that, okay, I'm designing something and I want to make a scroll cut. It has to be less than, you know, if the distance is 14, now I know that that scroll cut can't be any deeper than 14. So if I'm cutting a circle on here, you probably want it 14 or less, like 13 3/4 or something, because otherwise it's going to interfere with that. And when you rough cut it, it's got to be less than 14 too. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind is the depth of cut, or the depth of the throat. The depth of cut is actually over here, so you can adjust this up or down, see, like that. And so, say we were going to cut a scroll cut on this piece of material. Now, it's got this whole distance between here where you can cut your finger off, and it'll happen quickly. If you just slap your finger against that blade, it's off just that, like that. It'll just take your finger off instantly. That bone and everything, it'll just be this big old exposed piece of bone there, and it's really ugly. I've talked to a couple of people that have done it, and I saw one person do it one time where they actually, this woman ground the tip of her finger off. It's just not a pretty sight. It's very painful. So the way to avoid that, and you are going to avoid it, is you're going to adjust this. Because if I ever see you not adjust this, I'm going to kick your butt. So you have to adjust this up and down. You have to. Because this guard is here, and guess what? I can't cut my finger off anymore, right? That's what you're going to do every single time. You're going to take the time and you're going to adjust it. Okay, so that's if I was going to cut it this way. But this time, I'm actually going to cut it endwise so I can cut those plugs off. And so I'm going to cut it, or adjust this up out of the way for now. Just bring it quite a ways up, but I'm not going to turn the machine up until I'm ready to cut. And so you slide it over, and there's a, I forget the markings here, what it's called, but there's a way to, it's like a scale. And so you can adjust the little red line to the 1/4 inch mark, and we want these to be a 1/4 inch. Now, some saws are equipped with 2 sides, because there's the cutting to this side of the blade, there's cutting to the inside. The scale on all my saws are always to the inside. It's between the fence to this blade, because that's the majority of the time. That's where you're going to be cutting with this machine. Very seldom will you ever have to turn this around and be cutting on the other side. In fact, I've never seen it. But, you know, there's weird things you have to do from time to time with machine tools. Okay, so then the next thing you do is you adjust this up and down, and sometimes this fence is going to dictate how far up and down you can get it. But at that point, see, I'm going to be able to get it close enough where it's going to be within that 1/8 inch anyway, so it's not going to be a deal. But say the stock wasn't letting me put it all the way up, or the fence is hot, so I'm ripping something that's right here. What I could do is I could put a sacrificial fence on here, just clamp it on up higher or something, and then bring this over, and then it'll allow me to keep the blade out away from there and still cut this. So there's always a safe way to do something, and you just have to do it. Take the time and do what you need to do to cut safely, because you don't want to cut yourself. There's been times overnight I can't think of how to do something, so I'll go to bed and sleep on it, and the next day I'll think, you know, after I've slept down, I'll go out and I'll do it, and it's, number one, it usually saves me time, or I can do it safer. So it's a win-win. So now we're going to turn it on, and we're ready to cut here. So we're just going to cut down that slot. Sometimes it's a good idea, you know, roughly I need to cut to right here, so I know when the blade gets about this distance right here, I'm going to stop cutting. Because I don't need to keep cutting, you know, there's no plugs here. So I'm just going to stop cutting, and I'm going to shut off the machine, and let it stop, and I'm going to pull the back off. And Sometimes it'll catch a little bit, and you can open up the thing and just rotate the blade a little bit, but that'll keep you from ruining the plugs, and we'll have a nice plug to put in our stool. So anyway, I'm going to cut the plugs now. We'll pull that off, and we should be able to just tip them out. There's our plugs. See, they all fell off this piece, which was actually holding it in place. And then here's my pretty little plugs. Got a nice little batch of them. So there we go. Now we can start putting them in to our stool. Forget how many I'll need for each stool, but what you would typically do is you'd make enough for all the stools, plus 5, 10, 20, or whatever you think is necessary to get them in, and then you just start applying the plugs into the holes until you're done. So anyway, we're going to move over to putting the plugs in now. It's a type of hammer, but this is called a mallet. Mallets are typically made out of wood or rubber, and the reason you use wood or rubber is to because you want a softer surface to hit with. And you still got to you should avoid using your hand to hit something. Especially if you get a little older like me, and if I hit something hard, I've got arthritis in my joint, and it just hurts. Not always right away, but that night when I go to sit down in the chair and watch the news or something, I'll notice that my thumb is hurting, just something terrible. So instead of hitting with your hand and concussing your hand, concussion means that you've hit something. It's like you hit your head is concussion. Well, you're concussing your hand. When you hit it, use it to hit something, and it's one of your most delicate and most used parts of your body. So you want to take really good care of your hands, and the best way to do that is use the right tool for the job. So you want to use a mallet in the right spot. You want to use a metal hammer for other things, pounding nails, doing things like that. That's where you use a metal hammer. A lot of woodworking stuff, like for furniture and stuff, I'll use a mallet, because I don't need to use a hard hammer. I've actually got probably 3 or 4 different types of hammers. I got one made out of brass that I made myself. I've got a mallet that I made out of wood myself. I got a rubber mallet. I got several different types of steel hammers. And so you just got to have the right tool for the job. And for this job, a mallet would work just fine. The other thing is, if you're holding something like this, guess what? Instead of that little small thing, sometimes you want a longer piece of wood. Today I got this little dinky piece of wood, so I might have to go find a little bit bigger piece, but I'll see if I can make it work. Maybe just go like this off to the side. But you don't want to hit your fingers with your hammer, because that hurts too. So, all right, getting on to the plugs. There's going to be one rough side where the bandsaw is cut. Pardon me. And then you'll have one smooth side where that was up against the fence. So you want to have the smooth side out. You don't want to put the smooth side in, because it's just more sanding to do. So then, now that you know that, and then there's the grain. So just like this has grain, like it's running this way on the stool, you want to have the grain of the plug going in the same direction. Because if you turn it, it just sticks out a lot more. You can see it better. When you plug a piece of wood, it should almost make the whole thing disappear. And that's what we're really shooting for, is just to make the plug disappear into the wood. And so other times I've seen people use like a really dark one and show off. So you have really white wood, and they'll use like a really dark wood, like a walnut or something, to show off the hole of the peg. It just makes it look pretty. Sometimes it's a little way to offset some color and get some color into things. But so anyway, I got my grain. It's running this way, so I'll just make a real light mark across. I don't know if you can see the mark, but that's it right there. Can you see that? And so anyway, the grain is running this way, so I want my mark. I only did that for you. If you can, just don't even mark it. But on the cross grain, you want to try to remove most of the dust too. So on the cross grain, tip the bottle's plugged up. And I'll have to use a little trick. Use a screw. You just put it right in the tip, and you pull the plug out. So you just screw it in a little bit, and see how the plug came out. So you just take the plug off the screw, otherwise you ruin the screw. So anyway, you just put a little bit of glue on each side, usually on the cross grain. You don't want to put it on the end grain if you can help it. For some reason it just, you get a lot better adhesion. I don't know why, but I just don't want to go into it right now. But then you put the, remember how I made that little line? So now it's lining up with the grain. And I want to take a little piece of wood and put it on top of that. So say the plug is actually 3/16 and the hole was 5/16, so you got an 1/8 inch disparity. If I hit that and it goes under the surface of the stool, so under the stool surface here, that doesn't look nice. You want it always a little bit above, so if anything you got to shave it off a little bit with a chisel. I forgot a chisel today. But so anyway, you put the plug in like that with glue where it needs to be, and you just use the little piece of wood. Now I can't overdrive it because the wood won't let me drive it past the top of the surface. That's why you use a little piece of wood to drive the peg in, or the plug. And that's how you apply a plug. So that was easy. Now in each chair we got, let's see, 4 sides, and we got 8. So 4 times 8 is 24, isn't it? 16, 32. So there's 32, and then we got the 4 on top, so we need 36 plugs per stool. We're going to be making a lot of plugs, but it's okay. That's what we're doing today. So off we go. You have a great day.